In this lecture, we are looking at keys attached properties and how you use them to give superpowers to your QML components. So what are attached properties anyway? They are properties you attach to your QML components and give them powers that they otherwise wouldn't have had. To make things clear, let's go to Qt Creator and play with us. Okay, so here we are in Qt Creator. We are creating a new project as we always do. We call it keys attached property demo. Store it in the usual location. Choose our Qt version. Choose your kit and finish. Let's change the title to say keys attached and put a rectangle inside. We are going to say rectangle. Give it a width of 300, why not? A height of 50. Give it a color of Dodger blue. We center it in the parent and set its focus to true. We want to give it the focus so that it receives key events. What we want to do is type keys on digit 1 pressed, for example, and console log pressed on key 1. Let's run this application and see what it does. You probably guessed it. We are going to press the 1 button on our keyboard, and we are going to have a message in the application output pane here if it works as we expect. So I click on 1 and you see that it says pressed on 1. This is how you capture events in your QML objects. You give them the focus if they don't have it, and then you handle events for different keys like we did here, keys on digit 1 pressed. To see the full list of these events, let's go to the documentation and search for keys. And if you go down in the signals here, you can see all these signals here that you can handle. But this list of signals is not exhaustive. Not every signal is documented in here. And that's why they give you this pressed event where you can check the clicked event yourself. So what we're going to do here is to do keys on pressed, handle that event, and from the documentation you see that this pressed event passes in a key event, and this event has the key that was pressed as a property, so we can check for it. So right now we are going to do this check. We are going to say if event key equals Qt key1. We are going to output something. We are going to say the same thing here. Console log pressed on key 1, and we are going to comment this out to make sure that it is this one that is working. Run the application, press on 1, and you see that we receive the event. You have two ways you can capture your key events in your QML applications. You can capture events for the particular events that are provided here, or you can use the pressed event and check for the key that was pressed yourself and do appropriate action in your QML application. So what if you have these two signals handled? Let's see what happens. Run the application. You click on 1. You see that one signal is being fired. The other one is not being fired. Which one is being fired here? To differentiate that, let's flag in the console here, say that it is the specific signal. We're going to say specific and say general signal. Run the application. If we click 1, you see that the specific signal takes priority over this general signal. If you want both of these handlers to be called, you need a way to let on digit 1 pressed here give a chance to the second handler here to run. And the way you do that, you say event accepted and set this to false. And what this is doing, it is flagging this event as not handled, and other signal handlers that might be interested in handling this event are going to be fired. And in this case, keys on pressed is going to be fired, and we are going to capture it here and output our console message here. Let's run the application. Press 1, and you see that now both signal handlers are being called. To prove our case, let's set this event accepted property to true, and you're going to see that only the specific signal is going to be fired and handled. One signal, the specific one. Another thing I want you to see is how to work with modifiers. How do you know if the user pressed your key while pressing, for example, the control key, the shift key, and things like that? Let's add another key handler. And we want to capture the handler for the key 5. Okay, we want to detect if the user pressed the key number 5 while pressing down the control modifier. So we want to say if event modifiers equals control modifier, which is this one, we want to say pressed control 5. And if it's not, okay, and you might wonder, how do I know this? Let's go back to the documentation. This is the only source of truth when in doubt. Let's go back a little bit. On digit 5 pressed, you see that there's an event parameter that is passed in here. Let's look at it. And it has a modifiers property, which says the modifiers that you can pass in here. We are interested in the control modifier that says a control key on the keyboard is pressed. This is how you check these things. And they give you a nice example you can look at, but we are going to test this in our code anyway. Let's run the application. I press number 5. It's going to say pressed regular 5. I hold the control key down, press 5, and you can see that it is saying pressed control 5. This is cool. So if you want to do the same thing to check for the modifiers while using the unpressed signal, how do you do it? One way I can think of is to actually cheat from the documentation. You just saw this. You can copy this and modify it to suit our needs. I am going to comment this out because I want to have the same effect as this one. I am going to paste in my code here. We want to check for the key number 5, so we are going to change this to key 5. Go down to key 5. We want to change this to a triple equal sign because that's more safer. And we want to check for the control modifier. Let's copy this and put that inside here. We are checking to see if the pressed key is key number 5, and we are doing an AND operation with this expression which checks to see if the control key is pressed. If all this is true, we are going to know that control 5 is pressed. Run the application. Hit control 5, and you see that we have our thing working. I hope this opens your eyes on ways you can use the keys attached property to handle any key in your QML application. In the next lecture, we are going to look at how you can transfer focus between your QML components in your user interface. I'll see you in the next lecture.